Sure. Mic, please. To the moderator and the panel, please. Everybody, thank you for your kind attention.
Hello. It is audible, I guess, yes. So thank you, Ms. Jain, for introducing the session. So this session will continue, will focus on research and clinical issues as relevant to Huntington disease, with hopefully with particular reference to India. I'll start with Jaison in the clinical aspect. So can you share something about how common this is and what are the common issues that people come to you in the clinic, especially in this part of the world who have Huntington disease?
So Huntington disease is not something most neurologists deal with on a regular basis. If you're a specialist and you're dealing with movement disorders, you will see it more. So the exposure as general neurology during training with Huntington disease, we are able to diagnose it, we're able to see it, we understand how they present. We know that patients would have psychiatric problems, they would have cognitive problems, which means difficulty in processing, and they have a lot of movement disorders where they are, uncontrolled movement, which causes a lot of distress. And when we see these patients in the OPD, when they would present to us, they can present with either of them to begin with. It is not like first this will happen and then this will happen and then that will happen. But it can happen that they came to a cognitive neurologist first and then later on evolve to have movement disorder. Then you start to think, oh, is this Huntington's disease? Or they may present to the psychiatrist first and be on treatment for a while with them. And then later on, when they start developing movement disorder, then we start to think, oh, is this really Huntington's disease? So the age of presentation also, usually it is 40, 50, that's the age you see. But then depending on some families, you may have at earlier age, some you may even see it later on age. So it's not even fixed as to what age you would get to see that. We also know that Huntington's is not only a disorder of the brain, it's actually a disorder that affects different body organs. So that is new information. So as neurologists, many people wouldn't be aware that, okay, we have to look at other side also. The patients lose weight, they have metabolic problems. So all of that needs to be looked at. Being a rare disorder, people who see patients with Huntington's disease regularly would be much better off, because that, like anything, what you do more of, you become better at it.
Huntington disease was probably the first neurodegenerative disorder for which we found a particular gene in the recent past. I mean, Duchenne we know for some time, but I think HD gene was discovered sometime in the early 90s, yes. 92, 93. So it's now 40 years, or 30, whatever, 30, 40 years. How quickly, what are the new developments in understanding Huntington disease, both from the genetic basis and the genomics in terms of therapies? I know this is a very big question, but you're the best person to answer that.
That's really like a good question and tough question. But I would like to also give a proper response in terms of my journey in this area. And the way I am connected with Huntington is because there is a shared mechanism of Huntington with various other neurodegenerative diseases. So generally genetic disorders are caused by single base. So DNA has many bases, 3 billion bases. So most of the genetic disorders, they are caused by any of the base changing to the other alternative version. But Huntington and various other neurodegenerative disorders like ataxias, they have the DNA bases getting repeated. You must have seen that in the presentation before. So what was it the case that it was easy to diagnose at laboratory level, I'm saying. Of course, the clinical judgment is the paramount because you require really an expert to direct the test the right test to us. Otherwise, like patient keep roaming around thinking that whether it's movement disorder, it's something else, it's Parkinsonism, something, various diagnoses they receive. But having established and at the forefront, I will say Dr. Jain has collaborated with my grand mentor, Professor Samir K. Brahmachari, and both of them helped establish first of country's molecular centers, both at NIMHANS and one at our center at IGIB. So I think definitely, even in for this disease, Huntington, as well as the other neurodegenerative disorder, we were in quite, like say, at front that to diagnose, unlike other genetic disorders, because the access to the right technology to read entire DNA was not possible until just 2011 or so. So, but we are able to diagnose these diseases from way early than, like say, you can say 90s. My lab, I think my institute's lab started in 97 with Dr. Jain's collaboration. So going forward, like say, that's how I was connected with Huntington, because I could read CAG, that's it. And if any patient requires CAG reading for Huntington, sometime for other diseases, they will be referred to me. And we have been, like say, we have been given referral for performing testings and all. We have been counting numbers basically. So counting numbers has also allowed us to do some core genetic stuff to understand that what is the origin, and from origin to now coming to understand disease better. Like I'm talking, sorry, at length, Dr. Jain, but I'm just trying to say. So I'm just telling you the journey that, like say, so the establishment of the laboratory, the testing facility, which is at par, equally capable with Western world, because the discovery has happened there. The cause has been identified there. But to evolve the test here in the country at that period of time was very, very challenging. And now we are living in a different world. But I can't imagine like how my grand mentor and Professor Jain has established those laboratories, not my cup of tea in today's time, but they have done very meticulous work. Because of that, we are able to easily diagnose. But what has not happened, I spoke to a few clinicians afterwards. I think you would know Professor Satish, and he works on epilepsy. And I was just trying to tell him, like, sir, we started work in 1997 onwards, but we haven't achieved a major breakthrough or anything from Indian side. So there, he said, like, say, clinically, we are quite lagging. Research-wise, we are quite like progressing well, but the coordination is where we lack, and we need to integrate our system, our lot of experts, the clinician scientists and clinic hospitals and research centers. If we bring all of them together, we might be able to understand diseases better. And as I coming back to the same thing, Huntington counting started, then a clinician, they study whether two of the Huntington, because they share the same problem, CAG repeat. And he was talking that some patient develop disease at early age, some develops at late age. So what is the cause? So then those questions are to us, meaning to laboratory. Then we try to understand what is the difference between this patient who develops disease early versus who develops disease at late. One factor, repeat, as I said, CAG, the number of that affects the onset. Even beyond that, two subjects with the same CAG length, even they would have a different outcome. So that is where the newer technology advancement, which allowed us to read all of the DNA, started to give hints that other than this Huntington problem, there are other modifiers in our DNA, and that can actually explain a lot of unexplained clinical variability. And indeed, they are the focus for the current treatment advancement. Those are the points, basically. So this actually required the work at root level. I'm talking about the gene, the disease, and also the future development that has taken up and what is happening in global research, all targeting the root problem. Not like, say, around like say diabetes. We don't treat the root. I don't know where we were just trying to lower the glucose and trying to help muscle to metabolize that faster and all. But here the target is the gene itself. So I said to Dr. Jain morning, like say, we are still lagging in research a lot, but now with the advent of gene therapy, because it is somewhat easy to target gene rather than like say any protein in some for unknown cause in diabetes. Because for genetic disorder, we know the target and every gene with the current tools can be targeted. Earlier, people struggled to identify a target where to for that disorder, which is the target. But here we know the target. And these tools in today's time, they are not like pharma-based chemistry requirement and all that. Still, even a molecular biology setup can come out with some gene therapy, which is just like either corrects the problem of Huntington toxicity and so forth, all that downstream effect. So I'll just stop here. Maybe I'll continue. But I'm saying that it's working, the basic science, the first studies, that has really helped. But I would just like to integrate us, all of us at the country level. And I would like to say, like working with this Huntington, not heavily. I work with ataxias with Professor Achal. He couldn't join today. We were able to fetch one of the first human trial for Friedreich ataxia. And that got approved just last month. And that will be the first of its first human trial, one of the first human trial. And that will take place for Friedreich ataxia. There the problem is repeat, but this is not CAG, that is GAA. And we've been working for that disease for long. The same time we started working with Huntington. So by regular small steps, we could at least manage that, like at least we have a cohort of patients, all regularly followed up, all like what we call is what we call usually that this as natural history study cohort, because there's no treatment, so person evolved naturally, their disease progress naturally. So any collaboration with pharma also, they look for like which is are ready to start trials site. They will look for this patient cohort. Do they have? So I think that's one starting point. All patients having around clinicians, expert clinician. And suppose if we work for that, at least we will invite collaboration in terms of pharma doing trials. And parallelly, the other avenues for newer therapies is likely to evolve, given, so people wait, like, I'll tell you, like, they see if something is happening there, they will go there, like, in a way, to join hands. Otherwise, they will not, people will not take initiative in general. But I'm glad that we have a lot of people, we are the initiators, so I think we can take this journey, like, way forward. Thanks.
As Faruq explained, from the initial diagnosis of the disease to now actually being able to plan therapies has been a slow process. But if you look at it, in 30 years, we have been able to jump significant levels of quantum improvement in our understanding and a possibility of intervention. So we can do these things. They are not out of reach of our imagination or our technology in India. But for that, we need much larger collaborations, and we need much more collaborations within the country, between patient groups, between family members, and the scientists and clinicians. Because without patient involvement, none of the people have to consent, people have to agree, people have to cooperate, people have to remain on follow-up. Otherwise, as we were discussing, earlier patients with Huntington disease would just disappear. Nobody would keep track of what's happening to them. Unless doctors know what happens to patients' lives, we can't do anything. So in that space, I would now invite Dr. Sehwag to give us a public health perspective and policy perspectives on this.
So thank you, Dr. Is this on? Hello, yeah. So first of all, thank you to the HDSI and IGIB for organizing this meet with clinicians, molecular biologists, researchers, policy people, probably some government representatives, and most importantly, patient advocacy groups. So I am today, I'm kind of the new kid on the block, because my work has been more on the COVID or the infectious disease side, if you talk from the clinical perspective. And then Vijay invited me over, so I just started reading about this disease, though I'm a medical doctor by my training, maybe after my MBBS for the first time for the past 7 days. So please allow me to use some speaking notes. And since I saw the panel and I said there are great molecular biologists and clinicians already on panel, so I wanted to look at HD from a global health lens. And so I looked at it from a global health, systems, and policy perspective. Because ultimately, the challenge before us is this: how do we ensure that the scientific progress translates into equitable access, dignified care, and meaningful support for patients and families suffering from HD? So globally, we know research is moving rapidly. And in September last year, there was an AMT 130, which was very remarkable, which promises to probably change the entire course of this disease. Again, something very important from my work, because there is an approach we apply to health, which is the life course approach. So that's what stuck to me when I was reading about this. And we are witnessing advances in gene silencing therapies, antisense oligonucleotides, biomarkers, precision medicine, and disease-modifying approaches. And for the first time, like I said, in history, there is a cautious optimism that there might be a disease life course or patient life or a human life course altering approach, which is already underway by means of clinical trial in the UK. So again, but from the global health perspective, an important question emerges: who will actually benefit from these advancements? Because innovation alone does not guarantee access. And rare diseases often expose the deepest inequities within health systems. So for instance, if we compare the high-income countries and the low-income countries, HD patients may increasingly access structured genetic counseling, multidisciplinary clinics, robust national level registries, rehab support, insurance mechanisms, and clinical trial networks. Compared to low and middle income countries like India, many families are still struggling with delayed diagnosis or misdiagnosis or undiagnosis, stigma, fragmented care, financial hardships, and social isolation. So clearly, Huntington's disease is not merely a neurological disorder. It's, from my lens, it is a health systems challenge. It is a financing challenge, and it is, most importantly, a human rights and equity challenge. So when we talk about the India scene specifically, I saw some gaps and equally some opportunities. First, we'll come to the gaps. So somebody in the audience asked when we just came here about, does India have the capacity to diagnose? That also shows that even in this August group, the level of awareness, so we can well imagine what happens at the pan-India level. So India very much has the capacity to diagnose HD, but it is very inequitably accessible. Most of the testing is available in tertiary centers and urban centers. So that is one gap. Another gap is the genetic counseling, which is very important, both pre-test and post-test. That is inconsistent vis-a-vis high-income countries when we talk about North America and Europe. And importantly, we still do not have national registries. Now, this is very important from a policy perspective, when we, like Mr. Kaushik already said, because this is classically, we say that there are patients, but they are invisible in the system. So if you're invisible in the system, then there is no provisioning for it. So that's where you have to capture the correct burden, and that's when you take it to the ministry and you say, okay, this is like we are increasingly talking about evidence-based medicine and evidence-based policy at the governmental or the systemic levels, and that's why these national registries become very important. Second thing, of course, patients would know and the families would know that the care pathways remain fragmented. HD, as we know, requires a multidisciplinary approach, and a whole lot of specialities need to be integrated. And this is again what we are talking also at the global level, we are talking about integrated health systems. And in HD, this problem becomes even more starker because we want neurology, we have to integrate psychiatry, nutrition, physiotherapy, psychosocial support, and what have you. And what is typically happening is that the patients and the families are expending enormous efforts only to navigate these fragmented care pathways or systems, and that itself becomes a burden in HD. So, and thirdly, there is this issue of affordability and financial protection. Rare diseases frequently, we all know, that lead to catastrophic out-of-pocket expenditure. And even the symptomatic management, till now, that was the mainstay, I think, of the HD. And even that becomes exhausting over time. And with the newer therapies that are coming into picture, the gene therapies, we can well imagine the cost issue of that. So this raises an important ethical and policy question. How do we ensure that scientific progress does not widen inequities between those who can afford innovation and those who cannot? Because access must be built into innovation from the beginning. So coming to, these were the gaps that I identified at the India level. Coming to the opportunities. At the same time, I believe India is uniquely positioned to contribute meaningfully to the HD research and care. We have strong scientific institutions, a growing genomics ecosystem, experienced clinicians, cost advantages in research, and increasing biotechnology capabilities. With coordinated planning, India could become an important site for rare disease research, a contributor to global clinical trials, and potentially a hub for scalable, lower cost solutions. But this, again, coming to what this asks for is a systems thinking and policy alignment, not isolated efforts. So where do we go from here? In my view, there are 5 key priorities. 3 of them I've already touched in detail, but I'll just enumerate again for the sake of continuity. One is strengthening diagnostics and surveillance, the genetic testing, counseling frameworks, patient registries, and data systems. Secondly, developing multidisciplinary centers of excellence, which is already in the national policy of rare diseases, but we have to bring it. HD, in my view, can serve as that litmus test or the stress test for implementing this in a rare disease setup and can act as a model disease, and then and that's how we typically do an implementation. You do a great job with one, and then you can replicate it with many other conditions, if that sails. And third is strengthening the financial protection mechanisms, which includes insurance coverage, public financing support, and inclusion within broader rare disease implementation framework. The NPRD, as I said, is an important beginning, but having worked at the global level and at the national levels right up to the PHC, I can say the devil of the detail is in the implementation. That's where we have to focus. Because somebody asked me that what can the global organizations or international organizations, what they typically do? Well, and that's what happened during my COVID work as well. They can norm set, they can provide guidance, we can coordinate, collate the latest real-time research and share that information. But when it comes to implementation, it has to be country-led. So that's the point I would make in context of HD as well. Fourthly, somebody has already touched on the panel, enable clinical research and global collaboration. That requires a close coordination between the academia, industry, and policy collaborations. So India should, in my view, actively position itself within the international rare disease and HD research networks. This includes regulatory facilitation, ethical governance, patient registries, and stronger collaborations. I'm plugged into the global side of things. And like I said in my last meeting, previous week, when I got the invite, I did mention about this, though that was a purely infectious disease R&D blueprint team. But sometimes it's just catching that attention at the highest level of mentioning something, and things do take off in those spaces like that. And fifth and most importantly, strengthen patient advocacy. This I cannot emphasize more. Across the world, rare disease movements have advanced because patients and families organized, spoke up, and shaped policy conversations. Patient groups are not passive beneficiaries, they are essential stakeholders. So I would like to conclude by making a broader reflection. Rare diseases challenge us to rethink how we define equity in healthcare. Because if health systems cannot respond compassionately and effectively to smaller, vulnerable populations, then the system itself remains incomplete. HD may be classified as a rare disease, but for affected families, its impact is profound, lifelong, and deeply personal. And therefore, our response cannot be fragmented or symbolic. It must be coordinated, compassionate, evidence informed, and equity oriented. Uh, and I would conclude by saying that science can definitely offer us a possibility of hope. But how we need that hope to become accessible reality is through a systems, policy, and collective action. Thank you.
Out an ambitious ground plan. I hope that the scientists and clinicians and the government and the international bodies can actually do this coordination. Vineeth, would you have any ideas how to, as a practicing neurologist, how would you see this being transformed, this blueprint?
So, I mean, I did confess right at the beginning, my area of work has been in motor neuron disease and Duchenne's and SMA. So I would just want to say what we've done. What we, DMD, like Huntington's disease, is an illness that no doctor really wants to treat. You would probably see a child who comes with a lifelong chronic illness, and doctor is sitting, and then we tell them that there's no treatment, go home, or you tell the parents, counsel them कि इसको घर पे रखो, कुछ नहीं होने वाला. So that is the reality of how care happens in our actual practice. What we were able to do was, we have set up a multidisciplinary team. It's not hard to do. Any hospital can do it. So that's the most important thing. It's not some out of this world thing. It's a very, very simple thing. It's about coordination. So what we did was, we have space, we have beds. So we have a dedicated day for us. It's a Tuesday, on which day we call these children. We don't call too many of them. We call 3, 4. We can't manage more than that. So they come, and they come in the morning, and then we do their tests, very protocolized what tests need to be done. And then in the afternoon, the consultants from various specialities, they would come and visit them. So the test reports have come back. The consultants have to come. The consultants have very, very clear protocols, what they need to see. So the cardiologist is not going to take the family history and do the counseling and all. No, they're going to look at the echo. I'm talking about DMD. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you what we do. Um, so they would look at the echo, they would look at the readings, and then give their advice for that particular child. Similarly, the chest medicine person would come in, the psychiatrist would come, the psychologist has already done the metrics, the counseling psychologist would come, and then we would have, because I'm an adult trained neurologist dealing with children, so I have pediatricians support me for the child aspect of so the pediatricians come and see, the endocrinologists come and see, and the physiotherapists have seen them, the OT has seen them. If they need orthotics, everything is done, and 5 o'clock they go home. So that is what we've been able to do. But it took a while to get everybody to come together, and doctors want to do this. I have not had any problem with a doctor saying "Mera kaam nahi hai, maine nahi aana." Nobody, everybody wants to. They're moved by this. They want to do it. So the way I see it happen is, any multi-speciality hospital who has, or even if two hospitals were to come together, can do this in different cities. So for Huntington's disease, we just have to list out who are the specialists required and identify in various cities. It would be good that we don't have too many hospitals. It's good to have just the one. The reason is the patients are few. And for expertise to develop, like I said initially, you need to see them again and again over time. Doctors are smart. I mean, there's no lack of intelligence here. But then they need to see the need. We are moved by what we see. है ना, जो दिखता है क्योंकि उसी से दिल को तकलीफ होती है, उसी से आगे बढ़ते हैं हम. So if you don't see those patients, you're not going to do anything. But when you see those, you say Huntington's patients coming to the clinic, demanding, asking for care, things will evolve around those in different cities of our nation. You can even begin with, say, region-wise. We can even have a training course. HDSI can do this, of modules that need to be done on how that should look like. What should the psychologist be looking at? What should the psychiatrist be looking at? The neurologist, and then very, very focused. So it doesn't take time. So you can see 4 patients, and then you've done your job, and then there's a coordinator who then coordinates. We've struggled with a discharge summary. I'm just sharing some of the difficulties, because now if we had 4 patients, we had 4 of DMD, then we had 3 of CMT, Charcot Marie Tooth. So now it's 7. So moving them for echoes, moving them for PFTs, moving them for that, it suddenly becomes a logistic challenge. More importantly, the discharge summaries, summarizing what everybody has said and giving them the summary when they leave. So we are using AI now. So it's not yet finalized, but now we can use artificial intelligence. We can record as they are speaking. So the summary comes. So there's a lot of technology, affordable technology for hospitals to be able to serve people who are suffering and give them meaningful outcomes. Right now we have even international organizations wanting to organize workshops in DMD and SMA. Training, so we want to develop 20 centers, for example, in South Asia. So for that also people are willing to come and train. So just imagine in India, there are 15 centers who can do this. Is not in Huntington's, I'm sorry, but in Duchenne's. That's what I'm talking about. So like that, it can be done even in Huntington's. Just the same thing can be done in Calcutta, in Madhya Pradesh center. It should be an accessible place. No point in building it in a rural part where there'll be hardly 1 or 2 Huntingtons, but it should be in a major city where people can come, get their checkups done. Now these, they need to visit once in 6 months and or once a year for the whole thing to be done. They don't need to be visiting every month. So medicines now can easily, even in a poor child in Bihar, we do teleconsulting. So we can follow them up through that. Tele rehab is also now possible. Now even pharmacy, if medicines have to be sent also through PDF, they can buy nearby if they want. Or so there is so much available that can be done in India, if for Huntington's as well, if we want to do it.
Technical part. How do you see all the research and the actual technology transfer, technology being applied to the care of mentally ill, of Huntington disease? How do you see that developing in India from beyond the lab actually to the accessible technological inputs?
That's what I think we were talking about. One challenge, that the fragmented care, and also still like we are. I'll just talk about one aspect. I do not have direct experience with the translational research that is happening for HD in India. So even for diagnosis, like say we talk about the inequity of like access, right? So even whoever is lucky to get diagnosed, after that, like there is entire family at risk. There's entire community at risk. Like say a person has come from family and family belongs to a community. So you can imagine that if person has got positive, so entire community requires some sort of an awareness in terms of early identifications. And mostly the newer therapies that are coming up, it appears to me that mostly they work quite good at early stage, or maybe even they are doing a lot of pre-symptomatic what do you call the trial, pre-symptomatic subject-based trial. So I think diagnosis has a very important role to begin with. And as we go forward, the way I see is that like the way the Western world has worked is they started working with their cohorts, patients cohort, follow-ups, regular follow-ups, the natural history study taking, collecting their biomaterials. Like say, I think I tell you, like one suggestion my grand mentor told me. I went to him with some basic science idea for CAG repeat. If I cannot talk about much Huntington, I can talk about CAG. So I said, like, I want to develop this mice model and that cell model and something which others do. So he said, like, see, our strength in the country is our genomes, our patients. They are unique and they are your patient, that they are our patients. So if we can utilize that strength and develop research opportunity from not fundamental basic science point of view, but from omics science point of view, imagine, like, say, if we can read their DNA. At that time, he told me, I think in 2006, you can read their DNA, you can read their RNA, read their entire proteins. You might come up with something which others have failed to identify. So that's our strength. The numbers are very huge. I think that begins with the diagnosis appropriate and making study cohort, collect at the same time their biomaterial, like say the body fluids, the blood sample, the plasma, and the urine, etc. We have a research fund, utilize that for investigation, else keep it, store it for tomorrow's use. And that can give a lot of biomarker studies that we can support world. Suppose they are pioneer in discovering, we can support in terms of biomarker. For biomarker, they will require a powerful study, and powerful study statistically would come from size of the study, number of patients. That we can support. And that way we can have a one-to-one, like say, equal collaborations. Otherwise, like say, for them, sometimes our regulators say we are, like say, sort of a guinea pig app, something. Everyone wants to test here. But it's not like that now, today's scenario, because like we have our own strength and we have showcased like that for omics science, definitely utilizing our patient strength. So I think we still have a lot of opportunity going forward, and like we are able to do for certain diseases for repeat related problem. Like say when I said Friedreich ataxia, from diagnosing the first case to starting first in human trial, just last month got approved. It's a long journey, 30 years, 4 generations of scientists, my grand mentor, my mentor, myself, my students, still my student. So that takes time, but it's still like slow, but it was slow because like the earlier research avenues were like that. But now post 2015 or 11, the technologies have advanced to a point that like high throughput screening, the gene therapy avenues have come up very fantastic, in a very fantastic way. So I think we have a lot of scopes even to contribute to global science in terms of our patient community, basically. So I think the study cohort, the biomarkers, and if we have such a good cohort, everyone would love to collaborate with India. They say inside their circle that we are a big deal, actually. But I heard that they approached one of the trial for, I don't know, Huntington or something. They didn't find that site is ready enough, actually. Maybe something their premeditated thoughts, or maybe somebody must have told them otherwise, that like say we are not prepared enough to conduct a trial. The regulatory system is very complex. But now even our DCGI, they have evolved even for last 5-7 years. It's a fantastic evolution because the clearances, the approvals, and all are fast. We applied for DCGI approval for Friedreich ataxia molecule in November, and in March we got approval. Everything. So it's way fast, and it's the first human trial, not like the regular work. So for this complicated matter also, so now system is started to understand, like people are getting to know, and we can as well work step by step, starting with the patient related, that all the care related, asking from governments. That at least one example I have is that I told morning, Bihar government offers 6 lakh financial support for muscular dystrophy patients, just for their, not for treatment and all, just for anything required. The caretakers require their family support and any financial aid that is there. And if we are able to bring trials here, we can negotiate with pharma company, because our rare disease policy offers this 50 lakh support. That's at least $50,000 for them. So I think we can, and the quantity that we are going to give, we can manage to convince them, at least at this period of gap, till the time we developed our own capacity. I think we can make some marks.
So as is obvious, the coordination between various kinds of professionals is very critical. But the most important linchpin is the families. So thank you all for being here. And I think we've had a fairly interesting discussion, both from the clinical perspective, the lab perspective, and a wider ethical and administrative and equity perspective. So if we combine all these three, I'm sure we can look forward to some quick changes in the way we understand and manage Huntington disease on a day-to-day basis. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, madam.
Absolutely. There was a lot of information and a lot of things that we didn't know. Thank you, the panel and the moderator, for your perspectives, being shared on a global scale and the scientific insights that some of us did have access to. Thank you very much. You may kindly proceed. We now move on to the next, before the break, of course, we now move on to the next critical discussion focused on India-specific solutions and the possibility of expanding clinical trial opportunities for Huntington's disease within the country. It's my privilege to invite Dr. Manpreet Kaur, Director, Health Parliament, to kindly share her insights. Dr. Kaur contributes to healthcare policy research, digital health initiatives, stakeholder management across the health ecosystem. Her work focuses on public health innovation, healthcare policy, leadership development, digital health transformation. Dr. Kaur, the podium all yours.